basically a luring, or let me use the word is seduction. Let me use the word seduction. A luring or a seduction or a drawing towards something that is wrong or towards something that is sinful. That's basically what temptation means. It was supposed to be James that was explaining this, and it says that when you are tempted in James chapter 1, don't say that you are tempted by God, because God does not tempt. But every man is tempted when he's drawn by his own lust. So you see, drawn, when he's drawn by his own lust. Temptation simply means you are drawn or you are lured or you are seduced into something wrong or something evil or something sinful. That's what temptation means biblically.
All right, all right. Thank you so much for that explanation. So I'm seeing quite a few comments here stating that my voice seems to be a little down, and I'm quite
Actually, yeah.
really
I think it's the network
I
though,
really
but I can hear you a bit. So whatever happens, just be a bit loud so that just be a bit louder in your vocalization so that we can pick
all
it up
right,
and then
all
run with
right.
it.
All right, thank you so much for that. All right, so having described or having defined what temptation is, so let's go on to why is sexual temptation quite prevalent in the 21st century? Why do you think that sexual temptation is prevalent in this century? So,
Well, quite a number of reasons, quite a number of answers to that question. Why it's prevalent? Well, the 21st century is it's of course a unique century. It's an enlightened century. It's a century where
mm,
knowledge is abundant, and there's a lot of inquisity. There's a lot of people trying to get to know, people trying to explore, people trying to research, people trying to figure out. Let me just narrow the emphasis to the next generation or to the millennials, people in their youth and teens, and people below 30, all of this. So it's a jet age, or it's a technologically advanced generation. There's a lot of exploration. We have Google, we can research. My generation asks questions a lot. My generation is also they are very anti-traditional. They want to do things their way. They want to have fun. But I think also from biblical perspectives, there is also a great desire to um, to be obsessed with pleasure, or let me say, there's a great obsession with pleasure. It was Apostle Paul speaking to Timothy, and it says that in the last days, men shall be lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. Lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. So you see that there is an emphasis on pleasure, self-pleasure. People should enjoy themselves. People should, just do what they like. People should have fun. People should enjoy life. Jaye, chop life. Life is short. Enjoy life and all of that. So, it's a very strong ideology in this generation. And of course, sex is pleasurable. Let's know. Let's not withhold the fact. Sex is pleasurable, and if men have become very obsessed with pleasure, it's just natural that sex will be one of the things that will be massively embraced, So, but now we're speaking about sexual temptation and sexual perversion. God knows that sex is pleasurable. He created marriage, and please note that when we talk about sexual perversion or sexual sins, we are referring to sexual activity or sexual pleasure outside the boundaries of marriage. Outside the boundaries of marriage. Right. Whether it's between two people who intend to marry, or two people who are praying to marry, or two people who feel that God's will for them. As long as they are not married, if there's any engagement of sexual activity, it's sexual sin, it's sexual perversion. Now, so we have a generation that is obsessed with pleasure, but do not really subscribe to God's provision of pleasure, because God created marriage, and one of the blessings of marriage is sexual satisfaction. That's clear from scriptures. All right. Apostle Paul says that, well, it's better to marry than to burn, and that people who are married should not deprive themselves of that gift. Married people should have sex and enjoy the pleasure that sex offers in marriage. Okay. But then when a generation is obsessed with pleasure and does not respect God's provisions for pleasure, wants to get it in their own way, wants to do it in their own way, in their own method, then we have this issue of sexual sins, sexual perversion, sexual temptation. Okay, I'm not sure what your question was. Did you ask why sexual temptation is prevalent or why sexual perversion is prevalent? What did you ask exactly? Let me narrow it down.
Why sexual temptation is prevalent? But I
Okay,
guess you
now,
actually prepared an answer to it.
okay, so yeah, but let me drive home the sexual temptation thing. One of the reasons why sexual temptation is prevalent is because it's a sexually conscious or a sexually conscious generation. Um, Sexiness is everywhere, quote unquote. And when this happens, there is a consciousness of sexuality. There's a consciousness of sexuality. Lots of standards have dropped also. Decency, morality. Before we start talking about spirituality, decency, morality, all those things have dropped. What is even appropriate or what is even sensible, what is common sensible, has been altered. So in a sexually hyped generation, of course, sexual temptation will be much. It's the same thing with money too. In a money-driven world, money temptation will be much. So in a sexually hyped generation, because of knowledge, because there's this inquisitive, because there's this drive and crave for pleasure, all of these things have amplified the luring. Remember that temptation is luring towards something that is wrong, something that is not good. So because of all of these things, when I say it's a sexually hyped generation, I mean I've read a couple of things by men of God who spoke about how you go to churches and even in church you see how everybody's dressed sexily. It seems like what is beautiful has to be sexy, or what is termed beautiful is actually what is sexy. If it's not sexy, it's not good. If it's not sexy, it's not acceptable. Sexy is the new trend, basically. And with all of these, you have sexuality everywhere. Somebody does an advert on chocolate, and then he puts a half-naked lady, licking her fingers like one pervert. So sexuality sells. Sexuality sells and all of that. That's why the temptation is much, because those guys know what sells. They know what sells, so they're trying to put it in our face, trying to make it available in every quarter, and then quite a number of other factors. But let me just drop it at that point. We'll build on this subsequently.